So, welcome to the 6th episode of our Minecraft in Unity series. And last time, I've been showing you how you can introduce drops to your Minecraft game. And today I'd like to focus on crafting, which means that I will divide this tutorial into two sections. The first one, focusing on being able to craft items in general and how to set everything up. And the second part will be how to create the workbench and like the default crafting UI that you all know and love. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe if you want to get notified on our new features. So I've come up with a way that makes adding craftable items pretty easy. So let's go into our items folder that contains the scriptable items for all of our important blocks. And as you can see here, this recipe tab has been added with the items that will be required in each slot. Maybe one thing, you can get all of the scripts that are important for this video for free in the description, but you can also stick to the end of this video where I will be explaining them in detail. And if you don't mind, I'd like to, instead of uploading my scripts to Google Drive, would prefer to upload them for free to my Patreon, so you got them in a timeline and you don't have to keep track of all those links. And I'm also planning to give our supporters, regardless of which tier, anticipated access to them. So now let's say I want to add oak planks that can be made out of logs. Then I can just duplicate this one, change its name, its inventory sprite, and then I'm gonna drag my oak log scriptable objects into tab left, and that's already it for the oak planks. So I'm gonna create one for our workbench as well, with its model right here. And for its recipe, I want the player to put oak planks like in the top left square of the crafting grid, which would then look like this. And now all I have to do is to go to our inventory, game object, like that, lock this inventory inspector tab, and assign the slots that are responsible for the crafting, these four, right here, at crafting slots. Now I'm going to create a new slot that should contain our output item, and assign it right here. And now for each item I want this crafting section to be able to craft, I need to insert the respective scriptable objects right here. Now let's check out if it's working so far, and make sure to add your inventory UI right here at UIs in the player script. So later on it can make sure that none of the UIs overlap with each other. And I need to add my newly created output slot to my slots list as well. And now if I were to chop this tree, I got my drops right here, like in the previous episode. If I now drag those into the top left corner, you can see that I'm indeed able to craft these oak planks, just like that. And if I try to make a crafting table, that seems to be working as well. Great. So now secondly, let's continue by creating our workbench. So I'm going to open my blocks folder and create a new prefab variant out of my base block, like that. Do some business as usual by adding my workbench model to it. But now, unlike the other blocks, I want to remove my block script, add this specialized UI block script right here, that, as you can see here, derives from the block script as it shares some of its public attributes. I want to be able to break it within 1 second, make it emit brown particles on destruction, put my drop prefab right here, assign my scriptable item right below it. Now this is where it gets interesting. Here I can input the tag of my crafting UI, like that. The tag will be like this one. And the reason why I did that is to make it as easy as possible for you, as you can use this UI block that will open a UI on click for many of your future blocks as well. Like if you want to create like the anvil or Minecraft's enchantment table, you can use this one as well. But since we're unable to place other blocks despite the grass block, and I want to put this manually into our world, like that. And now for its UI, I think I'm gonna go on by duplicating my inventory UI, replacing the inventory script with this crafting script that derives from the inventory script. Insert my normal values right here, and of course it should have the right sprite applied to it. And now, unlike my inventory UI, I want to put my crafting slots right here onto this grid from our graphic, make some new ones, fully cover it, and put my output slot right here. And now adding the slots, and the output slot will be the same, but our crafting script will require a reference to our inventory in addition. I don't want to forget to add my craftable items right here. And the reason for the inventory reference is that I found the easiest way to handle this crafting UI that uses the inventory is to just copy and paste the inventory right onto the crafting UI. And as soon as you make some changes, apply those changes to our inventory as well. So finally I'm gonna disable this window again and try everything out, and add our crafting UI to our player's UI list. And finally I want to change the tag of my crafting UI to crafting, as discussed earlier. My crafting UI opens, and I can see my inventory at the bottom of the UI. If I make some changes here, I can see them affect my normal UI as well. I'm able to craft just as I wanted. Maybe one thing, if you're putting items in the crafting grid at the moment and leave the UI, they won't be dropping out, and instead they will be vanishing. If you're finding it very hard to do that yourself, I can make another video on that if you want. If not, I would probably do like the tool belt or enemies next. And now to the thing that I'm probably already notorious for, and that is our scripts. Maybe to start with the short ones to warm up a bit. This UI script I made as a base script to make our inventory derive from it. So I just cut out this toggle function from my inventory together with the window attribute and the open flag. So you can use this one like for your main UI as well. Then our inventory item script, where I just added a reference to the scriptable item to give like our inventory or whatever access to some data other than those like the sprite, and this public but hidden just crafted flag, so that later on our inventory knows if it can delete the item in our output slot in case the player takes out the items of the crafting slots. Then our newly created UI block, like for the workbench, it has the UI tag string and the inspector, and as soon as the player interacts with it, we get the game object with the corresponding tag, get the UI component, and set it active. To the player script, on the other hand, we got our new UI array right here, and I made one minor change to the check rotation function, which now emulates the rotation if any UI is open. We get to this function in a minute. The same goes for our check jump function, which now cancels if any UI is open. Then if we're trying to place a block, like by holding right, then we now check if we're dealing with a UI block, and if so, we want to interact with it by opening its UI, and make sure to return right here, so we won't be placing any block besides it. Our UI open function iterates through all of our UIs in the array, and as soon as a single one of them is open, we quit this function by returning true, and if not, false. And yeah, instead of checking whether the player wants to open the inventory in the inventory script, we now do that in the update method of our player script, and it says try, because we only want to activate our inventory if there's no other UI open, which we check by iterating through all of our UIs, ignoring our inventory this time. This one will filter out all of our UIs that are already closed, and if we catch a UI that is open, we close it and set other UI open to true, so we don't open our inventory at the same time. Our item script is our scriptable object, which now has one object of this struct type, recipe, which contains another item in each of the slots. And for the first time on this channel, we want to redefine our equals operator, so we're able to compare two different recipes, and they should be the same, only if every single of the slots is the same right here, and if a single one doesn't play like to our rules, we immediately return false. This is the opposite, so we return true if both of the retypes given are not the same. And these two are just default functions that you need to use in combination with these. To our inventory script, again it now derives from our UI script and doesn't have the toggle function in its update method anymore. Instead we got this check retypes function, which converts our crafting grid into a retype, and for each of the retypes we attach in the inspector. We check if they're the same. If so, we need to make sure that there isn't any item in the output slot already. And if that's also the case, we instantiate a new item with the data from the scriptable object, like the name, the sprite, and so on, within the output slot at our drag and drop triggers, together with some additional stuff that I'll be showing you in a minute. And we set our just crafted flag to true that we talked about at the beginning. Alright, so I just needed to make two quick changes by adding this retype successful tag right here. That will be set to true if one of our retypes is indeed craftable, because if we have, however, find out that none of our retypes is craftable anymore, because the player removed one item from our crafting grid, and we still got the output item in the output slot, and has just been crafted, so the player didn't put it there manually. We want to make sure to remove it again and clean the slot, so that the player isn't able to duplicate things. Next up, our grid to retype function works as follows. We create an empty retype, and if we're dealing with 4 crafting slots, like in our standard inventory, we want to put the first item into our top left slot and so on. But of course we have to make sure for each single of our slots that there's actually an item in it. And then we quit this function by returning our retype. If we're dealing with 9 items, like within our workbench, then the first item will be the top left one, then top center, and so on. Our add output item triggers is pretty much the same as our add item triggers, and it does also add drag and drop right here, but in addition to that we add a new function that is called start output drag. It is defined below here. It sets just crafted for the item to false, removes all the triggers, and adds the default once again, so basically so that this item doesn't count as the output item anymore. And then for each item in our crafting grid, we want to consume one of them. If it's the last one, then we want to destroy the item used for crafting completely. This instantiate item function I made to save some space, to make it a bit easier for you. It just instantiates a new empty inventory item below our UI. In the hierarchy, assigns the corresponding values and assets and the slot and vice versa, and returns the newly created item in case we want to do something with it right away. And last but not least, our crafting script, which is a modified version of the inventory. As I said, it copies the inventory at the beginning using the paste function that you will get to know soon. And as soon as we make some changes, it means if we drop an item, we do the whole thing the other way around. So instead of pasting the inventory slots except for the crafting slots to the crafting UI, we paste the crafting UI's package slots to the inventory and do all of the stuff that inventories code-wise need to do by calling the same function of the base class. And our paste function, by the way, looks like that. We got the slots that we want to paste, then we remove all of the items through our clear function, which iterates through all of the slots. If there's an item in it, we want to destroy it. And just to be sure, set the item to null, and then we iterate numerically through all of our paste slots. And if it has an item, then we continue right here. We instantiate a new inventory item, which should be the respective one of the paste slots at the corresponding slot. And it then, as always, sets the right amount and adds our drag and drop triggers. And that was the entire list of what we managed to achieve today. If you don't want to set all of this up yourself, please check out my Patreon. And I'll see you next time.